you hear this? Apparently raccoons are now considered urban employees in Toronto, and they get benefits. I swear, I saw it on a reel.
Okay, so apparently Canada is switching to a 4-day weekend. Not like a 4-day work week, like a 4-day weekend.
I saw this thing that said if you don't take your shoes off on a plane, the airline can actually fine you. Like, it's a new rule. They're cracking down.
Or you could get the real story. Hi, I'm Karen Ciolin, an award-winning news reporter and host of the Big Story podcast. My team and I break down what's actually happening, from world-shaping events to the everyday stories that spark debate, so you can make sense of it all. We're here to explain what matters and why it matters to you, and give you the context you need for those kitchen table conversations. Trusted, Canadian-focused, curious, news that connects the dots. Listen to the Big Story wherever you get your podcasts.
Elliotte goes into the gas station, gets a black coffee, a dairy milk, and a Werther's Original.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that's a great combination, man. I like Werther's Original.
Yeah. You don't have a pack of Peak Freens?
And do you have any Fig Newtons?
Welcome to 32 Thoughts, the podcast presented by your Canadian Toyota dealers and the 2026 Tacoma. Get yours before red tag days are over. Elliotte Friedman, Kyle Bukauskas, Dom, and Christian, both handling the production here of this, the first pod in the aftermath of the 2026 Stanley Cup Final that is officially underway with Game 1 on Tuesday night. The Vegas Golden Knights take Game 1 on the road. We'll get to that. The rest of the news, the Thoughtline, all of that to come on this edition, Elliotte. But we've been AWOL the last couple of days. Where have we been? What's going on? Bring us up to speed.
Yes, apologies to everybody, Kyle. I'm sorry about this. We had a lot of notes and questions about it. As I mentioned on Monday, the travel situation the day before prevented us from doing our regular Monday morning pod, but I promised one on Tuesday. I'll be honest with everybody. I was not happy with someone on Monday night. And sometimes in life, you've just got to put yourself into the corner and take a time out. There are times you should not be around a microphone. And Monday night was one of those nights. So I just said, you know what, guys? We're going to record on Tuesday. So the reason the pod didn't appear on Tuesday morning was I called timeout on myself. Rare occasion, but sometimes you got to just put the muzzle on.
So who was it? Dom that made you upset?
No, surprisingly, it was not Dom. Dom
was it David
had
Amber?
nothing. No, also surprisingly, he's not even here yet. He doesn't show up till Game 2. So Amber, to be annoyed by Amber, he's got to be there in person. He can't do it from thousands of kilometers away.
Well, okay.
So
All
it was
right.
Kyle.
Yeah, was it me?
No, it was not you. As much as I would like to blame you, it was not you. However, before we start the pod, I would like to talk overalls. You had a fantastic open to the show tonight where I understand after the morning skate, you went and you visited Hamilton the Pig. And It was outstanding television, Kyle. It really was. I don't even know what we call our awards anymore, Canadian Screen Awards or whatever they are. You deserve to win it for that. If you haven't seen it, I retweeted it onto my X feed. You should, or it's on the Sportsnet. If you don't want to go to mine, it's on the Sportsnet feed. But Kyle, I have a complicated relationship with overalls.
Well, a pretty good story sitting right there.
I used to date someone and she loved overalls. And I would say to her, I love everything about you except the overalls. So I have a complicated relationship.
That does sound complicated.
So where did you get the overall?
Elliotte, I spent a good chunk of my morning, more than I would like to admit, searching online, calling around to different places in the Raleigh-Durham Triangle. Nobody had them. Had to ship them. I go, I need them right away. Finally, there was a sporting goods store in Apex, North Carolina. It's about a 20-minute drive from the rink. I called. She goes, yeah, there's like one at the end of the rack. It was a return. We only have one here. I'm like, perfect.
You
I'll
wore
be there.
used overalls?
It was a return. The tags were still on them.
I don't know. Dom, what's your vote on this one?
That's totally fine. As someone who worked in retail, I've seen way worse.
And their overalls. I was so committed to the bid at that point, Elliotte.
Yeah, I understand this.
They could have been 10 sizes too small. I was getting them.
Well, thankfully they weren't, but I can understand being committed to the bit. I do get that.
Yes. I just wanted to shout out from, Hugo Regenbald shot all that.
Yep.
Obviously, Kyle, the man that looks after Hamilton, they were being so gracious to have us there. And from Jeff Giordano, our producer, Ryan Zadebiak, our ISO director, Caitlin Lusty, our technical director, I just everyone, because that's a tight turnaround. We shot that at like 1:30 in the afternoon. You've got to bring all the footage back to the truck. You've got to edit it. Meanwhile, they've got everything else going on to get ready for, the actual game itself, to broadcast that. So for them to turn that around in relatively short order, I really appreciated it. Like, you can have any idea you want, but if you don't have a crew around you that can make it all come to life, you got no chance. So just wanted to say that quickly.
100%. It was a great bit. I loved it. The only criticism I got, Kyle, was nobody working on a farm in overalls would have hair that good.
No, we broke ground here on Tuesday, setting a new standard going forward. I just come from the rink. Anyway, Elliotte, this was a banger to start the Stanley Cup final. Great game, back and forth, lots of goals, some mistakes, but all part of a really entertaining environment. That barn was so loud, and then Vegas quieted it at the end. Tomas Hertl, forget that goal drought is a thing of the past now. Yep. That dude is rolling. Another key goal for him ends up being the game winner. 5-4 in the end. And I just think, Elliotte, as much as Carolina, I think they've got every opportunity to rebound, to adjust, and to claw themselves back into the series here moving forward. For the first time in these playoffs, they, in a lot of ways, have met their equal in the Vegas Golden Knights. Everyone talked about a team in Carolina that would not go away, that is relentless. Vegas has a lot of the same qualities.
I can imagine what it would be like watching that as a Colorado Avalanche player. You would have said, I've seen this movie before. It wasn't quite as dramatic as the 3-0 comeback that Vegas came back to win. That really was the death blow to Colorado in the Western Conference Final. But you look at it, you're Carolina, Ehlers is red hot, you score your first goal, the third fastest goal in Game 1 Stanley Cup Finals history, missing the record by 10 seconds. You're up 2-0 and you lose the game. And the building's going bananas. I bet you the Avalanche players were like, holy cow, I can't even watch this. I'm turning it off now so as not to see it again. You know, it's really interesting. I had a chance to I know you talked to Shea Theodore post-game, and I had a chance to talk to him too after he finished his scrum. And they're like Freddy Krueger. They're like Michael Myers. They're like Jason Voorhees. Just when you think they're dead, they come back to life like a horror villain. And the thing that, first of all, Theodore says they never get rattled about anything. Tortorella said that in the post-game, that all these guys have been here before. They understand what it takes to win. But Theodore said something really interesting. He said that Tortorella, what he does is whenever he calls them together, and if you listen to the audio of him during that television timeout when they're down 2-0, he always makes sure to bring up something that they do well. It's either something they've done well that game, that if they continue to do it well, it will be successful. Or if they started poorly, like they had in that game, something they do well or is key to the game plan that they have to do well, and they'll be okay. Like he says it. I can't remember what he says, if it's north, south, east, or west, or whatever he says, but he says, if we do that, we're going to be all right. And Theodore says Tortorella always does that. All of his messages are about, if we do what we do well, or we do this, which is part of our plan, we're going to be okay. And they go right out and they score and they cut the game to 2-1. Like, I think that's the biggest compliment I have about Vegas, is that you want a team that will bend but not break, that in the bad moments they will find a way to pull themselves back together. And they did it again. You know, the thing for Carolina is the other game they lost game 1 to Montreal, and that was a completely self-inflicted game. They made horrible decisions. They let the Canadiens get behind them. They got embarrassed. Game 2, they changed all that. They wiped out the Canadiens, and they won the series. You know, Kyle, this one, I looked at this more as, it wasn't Carolina that was the problem. It was Vegas took it from them. And on the game-winning goal, where Sissons made a great pass to Hertl, and as you said, Hertl's struggles are now a memory, that wasn't a situation where Carolina did something bad or made bad choices. That was just Vegas shredding their D and saying, we know what you're going to do, and we're going to get a step, and we're going to beat you to the spot. And that's what Hertl did, and Sissons made a great pass. And, you know, I'm not saying this series is over. Far from it. We've got a lot of hockey left to play, but this team Vegas will not be shut down after losing game 1 like Montreal was. This is a completely different animal.
There's no question. And especially, you know, and Tortorella mentioned in the post game, as you say, it wasn't an ideal start for them going down 2-0 relatively early, but he felt that even within that, there were some good minutes there, as he put it. It wasn't a team that had completely lost themselves, maybe just caught up in the energy and everything that goes on in your brain when, oh my gosh, finally, game 1 of the Stanley Cup final, it's here, even for a lot of those guys that have been through it before. So then to settle them down at the exact perfect time and for them to get playing again. Shea Theodore, you know, tough first shift, right? He goes for the pinch. Theodore chips it by him. He's gone, scores. And then our guys showed it. You know, he comes back to the bench and there's almost like a smirk on his face of like, okay, that sucked, but I'm not going to let that define my night. No, and he didn't. You know, he ended up with 3 points. I mean, a great goal to get them back going, and a heck of a play to set up Brett Howden backdoor in the third period. That was a really impressive performance. For all the talk on Media Day, Elliotte, about all the different roles, the different minutes and usage that he has absorbed with Alex Pietrangelo no longer part of the picture on the ice for Vegas. I think in a lot of ways you saw that, you know, even despite a tough start to the night for him, you really saw how valuable a player Shea Theodore has been for a long time, of course. This isn't anything new, but why a lot of people within the organization think it's even gone to a little bit of a different level here this season.
He talked about it. He wants to be seen as the guy who replaced Pietrangelo. That's a lofty goal. Like that's a Hall of Famer. That's a really lofty goal. You know, a couple other things about this game I want to discuss, or the overall situation. First of all, Kyle, if it's going to be like that, I'll take 6 more games easy. Yes, no question about it. Number 2, no cobbler again for the Hurricanes. They're 1-0 with the cobbler. I don't know what they're doing here. Like, you should not be screwing around with this cobbler karma. 1-0, okay? Bring it back. Bring back the cobbler. You know, there's a couple other things I want to discuss. We're going to talk about Chris MacFarland getting the job in Nashville in a couple minutes. This is going to be it's going to be really interesting to see what this final does across the NHL. We were going to talk about this if we'd done a preview pod, but we couldn't do it because I was afraid of throwing a temper tantrum. These two teams both have a really unique path in a copycat league. You've got Carolina, where there's no other team in the league where the coach is as much a force of nature in an organization as Rod Brindamore is to the Hurricanes. There is nobody even comparable to him as a head coach in the NHL. And, you know, some people would say John Cooper, but that's also a team with, Kucherov and some incredible players over the years. I think Brind'Amour is unique unto himself. The general manager, who's made a lot of really smart moves, is someone who is far from the traditional hockey path. And I think some teams are going to, and I think especially some owners are going to look at that and they're going to say, can we copy that? Can we do that? Is there a way that we can bring that into our organization? And I think Vegas is unique in the sense that they don't, years ago, Cliff Fletcher, when he was the GM of the Maple Leafs, he got in trouble for saying draft schmaft. Well, there's no team that lives that philosophy more than Vegas does. They barely have any of their own picks. They barely keep any of their own picks. But what they do is they recognize they're a destination, and if a really good player becomes available, they're going to want to play here. Like Noah Hannafin is a perfect example. When he first was going to get traded from Calgary, he wanted to go to Tampa. And it couldn't work out, and boom, and he goes to Vegas. Like their whole situation is like that. And not every team can do what Vegas does because not every team is a destination like Vegas is. But I find it really fascinating, Kyle. The two teams in the Stanley Cup final this year are two teams that do business very differently than most in a copycat league. And how is the way these two teams going to do business going to be implemented by other teams if it can? The other thing is the Carolina owner, Dundon. He's under a lot of heat right now in the NBA in Portland because of the things he's done since he got there. Right or wrong, I'm not surprised by any of it. We lived it in the NHL when he first got here, but he's in the Stanley Cup final right now, and his team could win. And, I think that I'm just really curious now if, apparently there's a reporter from Portland who was kind of following around. I don't know if they've written the story yet. But it's interesting because when you win, before you win, people tear you apart for the kind of stuff he's done. But when you win, everybody looks at you differently. They might not always like it, but they look at you differently. And now that he's climbed over that Eastern Conference hurdle, I just wonder if people start to look at Dundon differently and say, okay, what does he do that I can do? And I think this series is a chance not only to have great hockey, but affect teams are going to start looking at them and saying, what can we do in terms of the way they do business?
Yeah, and I think fortunately, certainly for ownership here in Carolina, when you say Elliotte, you mentioned the Brind'Amour factor. If you go back and watch when Rod was first announced as head coach back in 2018, 8 years ago now, Dundon said there was, because he had just bought the team a few months prior, right? He hadn't been around very long and kind of did some internal observing and eventually came to the conclusion there was no need to really do some wide net search for who's going to be the next head coach of the Hurricanes. He's going, I've got my guy. He's sitting right here. And that ended up being one of the best decisions that he made to set themselves up for where he is. Because in a lot of ways, I don't even look at Brind'Amour as a head coach. I just look at him as a Hurricane. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's you never say never, but it's hard to picture him coaching anywhere else. This is where his heart is. He's a Hurricane more than he looks at himself as just a coach in the NHL. So it's, in a lot of ways, it's been a perfect marriage that way.
Okay, one other thing, the Marner interview. Okay, so you ran your Marner interview, and it's obviously a big storyline. Can I tell a couple stories about getting some of the other sound for the Marner interview? Or is there anything you want to say about it?
No, I think I appreciated that he agreed to sit down with us, tried to be respectful of where his head was at, while also, let's face it, it's been a pretty busy 18 months for him. There's been a lot that's gone on in his life. And I know his media day, players are pulled in a lot of different directions. We had kind of got him towards the end of his checklist of all the different stops and people he had to talk to. But All of that considered, you're, as we know, you're not going to get a ton from him revelation wise, and that's totally fine. Like you're in the bubble of trying to win a Stanley Cup, but appreciate that he agreed to do it.
He was guarded. I didn't expect anything different. A big shot block at the end of the game. I did want to say it was so funny. We did an interview with Mark Stone. When he sat down with us for the one-on-one, the first thing he said to me was, "Are we talking about Marner?" I was like, "That's not why you were pulled in here." But it was just so funny. Like all these guys, I guess they just looked at us. They said, "Oh, these are the guys here to talk about Marner." And I mentioned this on the pregame, but the thing with the Tortorella was funny. So I saw Tortorella on the podium, and he's like, "I'm not talking about individual players. I'm not doing any of that stuff." And so one of our people who runs the Sportsnet social media accounts is Kaylee Sibley. She's here with another guy by the name of Anthony Corey. And so Kaylee was doing this thing where she put all the team names in a hat. She did it for both Carolina and Vegas.
Yeah, player names.
And player names. And the player the person had to pick a name out of the hat and then talk nicely about that person. So I saw that Tortorella refused to talk about individual players. And Kaylee asked, do you think he would do it? And I said, I'll ask him. And so I introduced Kaylee and I said, this is what she's doing. And he goes, yeah, okay, I'll do it. He played along and then he pulls his name out of the hat and he goes, "You guys set me up." And we're like, "What?" And he goes, "Mitch Marner." He legitimately thought that he was like, he wanted to check the other. I can't remember if he actually said it then or said it later, that he wanted to check and make sure like every name wasn't Mitch Marner. But
it was 16 Mitch Marners in there.
But it was just funny how it worked out. He gave a great answer, but he was convinced we set him up. It was pretty funny, but he played along, and it was really fun. It was just really well done and a really funny moment.
Yeah, awesome. And you mentioned the shot block he had right at the end of the game. Flashback of 2019 Game 3 against Boston. Almost the exact same play, like 2 seconds left on the clock. I think it was Pasternak that let one rip, and he got in front of it to hang on for the win. All right, so a great start to the Stanley Cup final. Hopefully it's just the beginning here, Elliotte. And, second straight series where Vegas starts on the road. They win Game 1, and there was no discussion afterwards about, well, at worst case, we have a split. They'll be going for 2 to head back to Vegas with. Game 2 coming on Thursday night. Okay, some other news around the league, Elliotte, and there's actually a decent list of things to get to. So you mentioned Chris MacFarland. Why don't we start there? This is one you had really been working on over the last 24, 36 hours as it really started to heat up. But he is in Colorado no more, now in Nashville. And we now know why they had waited so long to finally get their guy. MacFarland is now there as the president of hockey ops and the general manager. So what can you tell us all about how this one unfolded?
So everything exploded on Tuesday, but it didn't all happen on Tuesday. I did have someone who say to me, wait, did they get permission on Tuesday and then the deal got done on Tuesday? Like, how does that happen? And I said, no, the permission didn't come on Tuesday. I don't know exactly when it came, but it came earlier than that. Obviously, sometime after Colorado got knocked out. As everybody is aware now, the Avalanche have yet to have their season-ending conversation or media availability with Joe Sakic. This is one of the reasons we know why. It didn't all happen in one day. We'll find out exactly when they got permission, but MacFarland was in Nashville on Monday night, and he met face-to-face with the owner, Bill Haslam. And from what I understand, at that conversation, Bill Haslam basically said, what's it going to take? We want you. What's it going to take? Like, I really do believe, and I don't know how many people were still, it's really tough to tell, but I heard that some of the people that Nashville interviewed had not been formally told they were out. Like they were kind of just waiting. They were just waiting. So I don't know how many people that is, but I heard that some of them were called on Tuesday and told, we've got our guy. So other contenders had been waiting for a while. I really do believe that Nashville was going to do what it could to either get MacFarland or Tulsky. Now, as I've reported, they had requested permission for Tulsky before, but had been denied. I think if they had not gotten MacFarland, they might have tried again. Like, I think they were willing to consider that. So this search was going as long as it could before they knew 100% they couldn't get either one of those two guys. So anyway, at some point after Colorado got knocked out last week, they got permission. They brought him in. They had dinner. They said, what's it going to take? And they got it done. And I'll tell you this, the gossip, Kyle, and I think it's pretty good, is that he got a 6-year deal.
Whoa.
Yeah.
There's some security.
And I'm betting it is at more than minimum wage too. So, it was, I'll say this: the Joe Sakic and the Avalanche did well by Chris MacFarland here, because I think they could have easily refused the permission to speak to him. He had another year under contract. But I think everybody there in Colorado recognized that as long as Sakic was there, and I don't think he has any desire to go anywhere, MacFarland was not going to be able to get that type of contract. He became general manager. He was promoted 4 summers ago. I still think he was toward the lower end of the league in GM pay. And I just think that the chance for him to elevate, including financially, was not going to be in Colorado. And the Avalanche did him a real solid. Now, I think it had to be a big offer, both in terms of title and money. And it was. I don't know what the finances were, but no question it was a raise and a 6-year deal. It's a great deal. Like it's a huge opportunity for him, and an opportunity he wasn't going to get it with the Avalanche. And they got their man. And it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be a whirlwind. And the thing about Nashville is, and I've said this many times, and I go on radio in Nashville once a week, that is a destination. It hasn't gone well for them the last couple of years, but still, in the last few summers, they've had Ryan O'Reilly, Steven Stamkos, Brady Shea, and Jonathan Marchessault go there as free agents. Those guys just aren't going anywhere. It's a good place to play. It's a good place to live. And, are they going to have to fix some things that went wrong? Yes. But Nashville is a destination. And, sometimes it just, not only when it comes to buying concert tickets, Kyle, sometimes it just pays to wait.
Yes, no kidding. Yeah, you'd know a thing or two about concert tickets.
Yeah, when I can't retire, it's because I've blown all my money on concert tickets.
Yes.
Good way to go, though.
I suppose. I mean, there's no question that MacFarland had a good thing going in Colorado. Obviously, like, they had built a really great team. That came up a bit short this year, obviously. I suppose it's just, money talks. I get it, Elliotte. But the allure of having a little more power and a little more say in a place like Nashville, I think ultimately is what made this so appealing here, you think?
I think so. And you know what? I hate when people say it's not about the money. It is on some level. But, you get a chance. MacFarland is not a guy who really seeks the spotlight. But, it's an opportunity. It's like look, Joe Sakic was there. He's the guy in Colorado. He's at the top of the hockey food chain, and that wasn't changing anytime soon. And this is an opportunity. Can take care of your family. I don't begrudge anybody doing this. Nobody. And we'll see what he decides to do. You know what? I think the good thing is, I think for a lot of people who work for the Predators organization, it had been limbo. Like, the toughest thing sometimes is the uncertainty, and good or bad, Kyle, at least some people there now will start to get some answers on where things are going. Like, I mean, there's good executives there. There's a coaching staff there. There's support staff there. At least now they can start getting some answers. And I think that, whether you like the answer, you don't like the answer, sometimes it's better than the uncertainty.
Right, because now we are into draft combine week. The draft
Yep.
itself is only a few weeks away. Nashville's got a decent stockpile of picks for MacFarland to work with, whether they are used to pick players or utilize otherwise. And time is ticking right away for the new era in Nashville. Elliotte. Okay.
Should mention in Colorado, Joe Sakic takes the GM role. For now, we'll see what happens. I don't know that the one thing I'm curious about there is Andrew Cogliano. I think Cogliano has a chance if he wants to do it. He will get a chance to do it at some point. So I'm curious to see if he gets, I don't know, an elevated role, but Sakic leans on him. And they are bringing back Jared Bednar. He's got another year on. I'm curious to see also, too, if he gets an extension. Bednar's got another year on his contract, and I've heard he's coming back.
This just popped into my head, but I wonder if they give Eric Johnson a call. I mean, in some
Why,
capacity.
are you afraid he's going to take your job because you're frightened that he's too good a broadcaster?
No, I mean, I've made my peace with that because he is. but he said, Elliot, like when he first retired, like Daniel Briere reached out to him about, I think it was a role in player development, and it just wasn't for him at that time. But it sounded like he was a guy that was at least open to the idea of continuing to work in hockey for a team. Like, yeah, he could do the broadcasting thing as long as he wants.
Your resume never gets worse.
Guy's an absolute stud there. But just given, obviously, the history there with that organization for him, I wonder if he gets a phone call as they kind of revamp their front office a little bit now that the era with MacFarland is now over. Anyway, just popped into my head.
And still also, too, some clarity probably on Cale Makar. Someone called me about it. They said, did you say he's going to miss all of next season? I said, no, I didn't say that, but I do think there's a chance he could miss the start of next season. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Gary Bettman in the annual State of the Union address prior to Game 1 here on Tuesday, Elliotte. There's a few notable points that we'll rifle through here, but why don't we start with his future as commissioner of the National Hockey League. I know this was another one you were working on. You had put out just a brief report on Sportsnet.ca earlier in the day that there was conversations around a succession plan. He at least admitted as much, though there wasn't much further detail provided.
No.
So where do you want to start here with Gary Bettman and the future of the commissioner's chair?
Well, I did like the fact that he actually admitted there is one, because I don't know if he's ever done that before. And, as he said, there's nothing imminent. And, I want to make this very clear. I think the commissioner will be around for a while. So I got a call from one governor. So Tuesday was the commissioner's birthday. He's now 74. I did get a call from one governor who said to me, I'll bet you he's visible in one role or another until he's 80. I said, what, 6 years? And he goes, yeah, 6 years. I said, all right. I mean, I'm happy to bet anything for a steak dinner. So we'll be doing a steak dinner. We just got to figure out the terms. Now, I will say this. There were some rumors going around that he'd sign an extension. Those were denied to me. And I'll tell you something else. I had heard rumors that he was going to become chairman of the board of governors, which is now Jeremy Jacobs' role. And those were denied to me. Bettman is incredibly loyal to his deputy commissioner, Bill Daly, who's worked with him for a long time and put out fires for the commissioner for a long time. And I respect the loyalty. I don't think there's enough of it in the world, and I really do respect it. I think one of the things that's kind of been discussed about all this is whenever Bettman's time does come, will Bill Daly be the next commissioner? And again, the idea of Bettman going right to chairman of the board of governors, I know some other people who asked about that, and they were also told that's not going to happen. So whatever the succession plan is, and I think it has been discussed with the executive committee, which is a group of 10 owners. He's not ready to say what it is yet, and not everybody knows, but there is something. I just think one of the interesting things here is that there is willingness for Bill Daly to take over as the next commissioner. I just think that there are some owners who would like to have a search. Okay, if we have a search and Daly's the right guy, he gets the job. And there are other owners who are like, no, I think he deserves the promotion. So I think that's one of the things they are kind of sorting out, that whenever the time comes, will there be a search or will he just be put into the position? That's, I think, one of the things that's kind of being discussed. But it is interesting, Kyle, because for the first time, they really do seem to be putting together a plan.
Right, and that he's willing to admit it.
Yes, he's willing to admit it.
Yeah.
To some degree.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that was part of Tuesday's press conference. Also, a revamped All-Star Weekend that will be on Long Island next season. That skills competition for 25 and under.
We're calling that the Kucherov rule, by the way. You can't be old enough to be as jaded as Kucherov.
Oh, I like that. That's pretty good. That is excellent. And then the 3-on-3 that will now have an international flavor as opposed to divisional opponents. So it's the same 4 nations as 4 nations, Canada, U.S., Finland, Sweden, and then a 5th team comprised of all the other countries. And Bill Daly confirmed Russian players will be included in that team comprised of all other countries. And so it kickstarted the conversation again around Russian participation going forward in best-on-best events.
So the International Ice Hockey Federation really started this at the World Championships by saying they're going to consider it. And there were a couple of things that were really notable to me at this event on Tuesday. First of all, Daly himself said he'd spoken to the IIHF before the media conference, and the International Ice Hockey Federation had conveyed to them that they didn't think some of the European countries would boycott if Russia came back. And assuming that's true, and I don't know, and I don't like to guess with this stuff. Like this is serious stuff, and you shouldn't guess with it. If it is true, it's a big change, because one of the reasons last year was a 4 nations is because the league admitted to us that countries like Sweden and Finland wouldn't play against Russia, and Czechia wouldn't either, although ultimately they weren't at that event. And the league admitted that that simply by living in North America, they didn't understand the depth of the passion of that argument. So I've always assumed that if there was an international tournament like the World Cup, that would still be an issue. So for the IIHF to tell that to Daly, that's a big change. And we'll find out where we go. Now, Daly did say it's premature because nothing's done. But for him to indicate that, that's a big change. That's a big difference in where we were a few years ago. Now, also there were the NHLPA's executive director, Marty Walsh, and also Ron Hainsey. And Hainsey was asked about the players, how they felt. Pierre LeBrun actually asked the question. And he said that last year when the NHLPA did their team tours, and they visit every team and they do it before Christmas, that they asked the players if they would have problems playing against Russia in a tournament. And Hainsey admitted there were some players who said, yes, they would, that they wouldn't like the idea. And so if this becomes a reality, he did say they're going to have to talk to the players again and find out if some of these players still feel that way and what the number is. So we still got a few things to work out here, but it is interesting that at least from what Daly said, it's possible the attitude here has shifted a bit.
Yes, and it all stems back to what the IIHF has said back in the spring. And I mean, as Bettman himself said, they're still kind of looking for clarity from what they all meant by that. But they have long said they will follow the lead of the International Ice Hockey Federation in large part going forward on this matter here. So how about Bruce Cassidy, Elliotte? That continues to his future seemingly hanging in limbo. That was asked about here on Tuesday, and it sounds like the league, as contractually is the right of the Vegas Golden Knights, the league doesn't have much of an issue with it at all, at least for now. What was your read on that?
Well, they stood up for Vegas's right to say no. That was number one. As we've reported, Bruce Cassidy cannot just quit and say, I won't take another cent and allow me to become a free agent. They can't do that. Now, Daly also made a very interesting comment about how there are some coaches' contracts that this would not be allowed to happen, what Vegas is doing, but this is not one of them. And I took that to mean Daly, who's a really good lawyer, warning people, if you're going to sign a coach's contract, you better be aware of what it says when you're terminated. And I thought basically he was telling everyone, make sure you know what your language says and make sure that this doesn't happen to you. It was kind of a warning to every coach out there. Now, I tried to follow up a bit and get more information about what he was talking about. And what I heard is that I asked around, and what I heard was that it's when you're terminated without cause, which means your behavior doesn't cause you to get fired, there's different language. And apparently many of these contracts provide specific obligations that a team has around requests for permission. Like I had one guy tell me that in his contract, it says that you have to be actively looking for a job when you get fired. And B, and also the team can't refuse permission without a good reason. So I'm just, without seeing it, there must be something in Cassidy's contract that doesn't allow this. Again, I haven't seen it. I don't know what it is, but it's clearly not worded like some other contracts are, and that's given Vegas some extra power.
But didn't you get the sense that once this is all over, Cup Final's done, the dust is settled a little bit, whether it's a league-driven thing, but didn't you get the feeling there would be a revisit to this going, okay, can there not be a path to getting this solved and allowing him to speak to teams that want to potentially hire him?
I'm glad you brought that up because, yes, he did sort of leave the door open about what happens, that maybe we'll see what happens after the season. But at the end of the day, he pretty much said, or they both pretty much said, this is well within Vegas's rights. I'll tell you what someone else said to me that was really interesting. So, Kelly McCrimmon was on Overdrive last week, and he said, I work for the Vegas Golden Knights, and I will do what's best for the Vegas Golden Knights. I did have an executive from another team say to me that made him wonder if it was an ownership decision.
I see. Well, it would not be unprecedented.
It would not be unprecedented. They did it. They did it with one of their AHL coaches, Rocky Thompson, a couple of years ago.
Right. Okay. So while we're on the topic of coaching, it's probably good a time as any to check in on Los Angeles and Toronto. Is there anything new to throw out there?
LA, it sounds like Jay Woodcroft and DJ Smith. But if there's someone else there, I'm not seeing it right now. Smith just got back from the World Championship, so we'll see what Ken Holland does here. Toronto, I've heard they've done like 15 Zoom interviews. And I think Peter Laviolette was one of them, working on some others. As I've said, I'm not 100% certain about David Carl being out. Some other reporters seem to be very confident of that. And at this point in time, I have no reason to think any of them are wrong. I just haven't been told that 100% specifically. There's been too much this week about reporters fighting with each other about information. I can only tell you what I've heard, as much from the source as I can particularly believe it. And, we'll see. I think I'm getting closer to confirming some of these names, but Laviolette is one I know they did by Zoom, I heard. So we'll see about some of the others. I heard there are about 15.
That seems like a big number.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I'm assuming they're going to narrow it down soon.
Yeah. Okay.
By the way, I did have someone tell me that there's word going around that AJ Greer is going to hit the market. I think there's going to be a lot of guys who kind of go out there and check and see what their market is on July 1st and decide if there's any chance they go back to where they are or they take something else. But I heard it looked like Greer was going to hit the market, and I think that's going to be a pretty interesting player.
Yes.
A good fourth liner on a back-to-back Stanley Cup champion. I could see the market being pretty good for him.
Absolutely. I mean, he's gotten himself in hot water at times with his play, but you're right. Like, there's no denying the value that he brought, especially last year, to that Florida Panther team en route to another Stanley Cup. That always pays.
Did you see Barkov, by the way, at the World Championships?
That's like, how much do you want to talk about a warning shot?
That's what someone said to me. He said that whole tournament for Barkov was like, hope everybody in the East enjoyed it without me this year. Me and
Right.
We will be back next season.
Yes. Oh boy. You miss all year. And I know the World Championships, it's not the same level as the Olympics, but that's still so impressive. He was, he looked phenomenal. Okay, let's get to the final thought presented by your Canadian Toyota dealers. And the other big bit of news over the last couple of days, Elliotte, is that it is official in Vancouver. It was trending that way for a little while now, but Manny Malhotra is the next head coach of the Canucks. So it felt like even last week we thought we were going to get this officially. It did not come down until Monday night. So what can you tell us about the whole process and finally getting signatures on the dotted lines and Malhotra as the guy in stone?
I don't think anybody's surprised. I never really doubted it. I thought it was always going to happen. There's always a negotiation. You go through ups, you go through downs. The team tries to make the best deal for itself. The coach tries to make the best deal for himself. But 9 times out of 10, everybody wants the same thing, right? And I never had a doubt it would be Manny Malhotra. They've gone with the familiar hire at GM. They've gone with the familiar hire at coach. There's nothing wrong with that. You know what you know, and they've all won a championship together, right, in Abbotsford. So obviously winning a Calder Cup is not the same as winning a Stanley Cup, but at least you have an understanding of what everybody is like in a good situation, and a year like last year where it was rough in Abbotsford, what everybody is like in a bad situation. You know what you know. You've seen the person in the best of situations, and you've seen the person in the worst of situations. 3-year deal. And none of this is a surprise to me. Now we'll figure out where we're going from here. They're Cleveland, because Trent Vogelhuber is going to go to Columbus on the bench with Rick Bowness. That job's going to open up. The Abbotsford job's going to open up. I have heard some early rumors that the Canucks may have some interest in Jessica Campbell. There could be like a trade here. Patrick Alvin going to Seattle and Jessica Campbell going to Vancouver. Although you can't make executive and coach trades anymore. It's like maybe they'll pass each other on the I-5, Kyle, from Vancouver to Seattle. Because I've heard the Kraken have interest in Alvin. He obviously knows Jason Botterill. And I have heard the Canucks have interest in Campbell. Who knows where it goes, but I heard that's one of the names on their radar.
Excellent. First time NHL head coach for Manny Malhotra, and it comes in Vancouver. An opportunity to grow with a group that is in the early stages of a brand spanking new rebuild. That was the final thought presented by your Canadian Toyota dealers. Let's take our first break. When we come back, brand new edition of the Thoughtline on the other side. You're listening to 32 Thoughts, the podcast, and it continues after this. All right, welcome back. It's time now for the Thoughtline presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. And Elliotte, before we get to the submissions and the shout-outs, we both had some glaring, I would call it, oversight.
No, we have to repair some damage from one of the last episodes.
Yes.
So I got a note from an old friend of mine, and he said, "You have now provided a window to the world of what we know you to be on a day in, day out basis." And I said, "Oh yeah, what's that?" "Someone who has convinced the world he is an intellectual when he is really the dumbest man alive." I said, okay. And so my friends who've known me for a long time, my family who's known me for a long time, they know that I'm a space cadet. That if I'm, and actually, I'll tell you this, it's become even more so since when I made the swimming mistake in Rio, where I took my eye off the ball for a second and butchered that call. I've become even more like, if I have a task, I am locked into that task and I'm not paying attention to anything else. Like, people joke like nuclear bombs could go off next to me, but if I have a task right in front of me, I'm going to miss the nuclear bomb. And I am kind of like that. I am kind of wired that way. And so this person said to me, "What were you doing when you met Ben Lombardi, Owen Givens, and the person you called Mason St. Louis?" And I said, actually, it was after Game 4, I think, Kyle, and you, me, and Dave were going for a couple beers and some chicken wings and nachos after the game. And I admit I was a little tired. And he said, so you remember Ben Lombardi, he's going to play for the Barrie Colts. Owen Gibbons is going to play lacrosse at Lafayette. And Mason St. Louis is going to go to camp for Sherbrooke in the Quebec League. And the guy said, did it not occur to you for even half a second that Mason St. Louis was really Mason St. Louis, Martin's son?
No!
Martin's son?
Oh!
And it was like a 2x4 hit my face. I didn't realize it in the moment because I was locked in. It's all the fault of the beer and chicken wings and nachos. I was locked on them and I was tired. And the guy said, well, you can blame it on Amber and Bukauskas for not knowing either. And I said, no. I am blaming myself for this one. No one else is at fault for this. And he said the best part was you did it in person and then you read it on the podcast without still realizing who it was. So that was Mason St. Louis. And I can't believe I actually can believe I was that clueless. But my buddies love the fact that everybody got exposed to that.
So I got to ask quickly, because I remember you talking to them, but it was very loud in there, so I couldn't hear the actual conversation. But I did see at the end you were getting their names, and like, oh, here comes more shout-outs. And so when you got their names, did they pronounce it Mason St. Louis? Or do you even remember?
I don't even remember. I
wonder if they were trying to mess with you. Like, it's Mason St. Louis.
Those three guys must think I am the biggest idiot alive. And I quite possibly am.
They're like, hey, you guys Habs fans? Anyway, so because I couldn't hear the conversation at the moment, so I had no chance of picking it up then. But I completely missed that also when you read it out on the pod.
This is not on you or Dave, purely on me. Now, the other one I have to fix, and I got like 20 messages. I picked one.
Yeah, and I got to wear this one too.
From Mountain Lion Timber. Elliotte was just listening to this morning's podcast and had to pull the truck over to write this. I thought you may want to be aware of your egregious mistake. It is Rocky Mountain House, not Rocky Mountain Horse. While I can see what happened there, it's much different than, say, Detroit. As a resident of Rocky, as we locals call it, I'm slightly offended and majorly amused. I'm sure Doug, who was the person we mentioned, will be too. It's a great place. Come check it out sometime. I'm still a big fan of the pod despite this snafu. P.S. Vague snack requests are criminal. Cheers, Cam.
That's great. That's awesome. That is one of many. Yeah.
So that's from Mountain Lion Timbercraft, which is I guess a carpentry business in Rocky Mountain House. And Cam, I was looking at your Instagram feed. Some of that work you've done looks really nice. By the way, I will say 75-25 agreed with you. There are some people who were like, Kyle is dumb. You know what you were doing. He knows what you were doing.
No.
And we know Dom is really dumb.
Elliotte doesn't even know what Elliott's doing.
That's right.
How am I
75% of the responses I got were with you and Dom.
Yeah, I think it was even more than that. I was trying to find the DM, but somebody sent me a note about the Rocky Mountain House horse and was like, you live in Alberta now. Like, how did you not catch that? I'm like, I got no excuse. I was just clearly on autopilot mode when you said it. So that was one I needed to catch real time. But again, another one in one ear and out the other. Sorry, Elliotte. I try to save you from yourself.
On you. That one I do blame
I'll
on
eat
you
that
because
one.
You're from Alberta.
I'll eat that one. Okay. So speaking of, we got lots of responses about the snack debacle. And
by the way, the snacks you bought, those berries things were good. I give you credit. They were excellent.
Good. I'm glad. It wasn't a waste of money. Okay, so I wanted to read one here. This is Chucky Picks emailing from a gas station along the Trans-Canada Highway. You ever heard of that one?
I've heard of the Trans-Canada Highway, yes.
Yeah. Let me begin this email by addressing Kyle, Dom, and Christian. Folks, how on earth can you fumble such an easy layup? In the snack run world, you've always got to assume yes. So when my man Stank Snack Friedman here is asking for something sweet, then follows up with a separate text mentioning chips, it wasn't separate, Chucky. That's what threw me for a loop. It's yes and. To further prevent any snack-related mishaps, I'm going to save you each a lot of further snack anxiety and propose the following question I frequently ask people I travel with. It's important, so listen up. I call it the gas station name. You're on a road trip, it's late at night, and you pull into a local gas station. What is your starting trio? Your go-to? Chips, a bar, and a pop. Each of you list one and make note of your partner's choices. Remember them. We're talking regulation stuff here. No important goods like a Galaxy bar from the UK. Stank, I can't believe 3 people let you down like that, but at least Kyle came through with a bag of Kettle Brand Salt and Vinnies in the end.
Yes.
All right. Go-to chips, go-to bar, go-to pop. What do you got?
Why don't you go first?
Chips, anything salt and vinegar. That's why I got those for you. Because worst case, I would eat them. Bar, Kit Kat. Classic 4-finger wafer or the chunky. All day. Pop, yeah. I don't drink pop often. I do a classic Coke unless there's a Barks Rooper sitting there. In and out.
Dom?
You? Yeah, Dom, go ahead.
Chips, anything that is spicy. So Flamin' Hot chips or jalapeno chips. Pop, Fanta Zero, and chocolate bar, Canadian Coffee Crisp.
Oh, I like the coffee crisp. I have to. I was going to put
Nice.
coffee crisp. Now I have to change because I can't pick two. Can't pick the same one. So chips is either going to be. It's one or the other. I'm either a Tostitos guy or sour cream and onion.
Okay.
Pop is Coke. When I drink pop, I drink Coke. It's weird because the arena we're at in Carolina, that's not a Coke rink. You can't get a Coke in there. So it's a little weird for me, I have to say. And chocolate bar, well, since you said coffee crisp, I'm not going with that. So I will go with a Dairy Milk.
A Dairy Milk, like,
Yeah.
oh, yes. Nice.
That is such an old person chocolate bar.
What? What does that mean? What's an old person chocolate bar?
Like, could you not have chosen something more fun?
Dairy Milk's good.
What is more fun than a Dairy Milk?
Oh, Henry, Reese's Cups, Kit Kat, like Kyle said.
Why is a coffee crisp more fun than a Dairy Milk? And plus, Dairy Milk has all these different versions. There's the crunchy version. There's the Oreo version. There's the toffee version. There's so many different versions of Dairy Milk.
I just assume you were a plain Jane kind of guy. Dairy Milk, milk chocolate. Just keep it simple.
Dom, go back to sleep.
Oh, we need Christian's picks too. You're part of this
Christian.
now too.
Yes.
Let's go Miss Vicky's for chip brand. Honestly, any flavor, but the plain old original are great. Barbecue. Chocolate
Great
bar,
choice.
I'd say Twix. Twix is a go-to for me. And then
Wow.
I'm not a pop guy either, Kyle, honestly. Like
Twix is
where does
good.
Gatorade,
Twix is a good call. Is Twix
Love
fun,
Twix.
Dom?
Love Twix.
Does that qualify as fun?
Yes, old man.
From the left factory and the right factory.
Does Gatorade count as pop? Like if I'm going to
Sure.
not a grocery store, a gas station,
Yeah.
it's orange Gatorade would be the answer.
Orange.
We're not going to
Gatorade.
electrocute you over Gatorade instead of pop. You're good with that.
Orange Gato for Christian. All right. Got it all written down. Next time we're on a road trip, the 4 of us, there will be no need to even speak when we pull into a truck stop. Know exactly where to go. Okay. One more here, Elliotte. And it is trivia. Comes courtesy of Kirk from Billings, Montana. Greetings from Billings, former home of the Bighorns of Pat Conacher, Gord Kluzak, and Andy Moog. Rod
Dave
Brindamore
King
was
coached there too.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Rod Brindamore was the captain of the Hurricanes when they won the Cup back in the day, and it made me wonder, has anyone won the Cup as a captain and later as a head coach? The only one I can think of possibly is Bob Gainey, who was captain of the Canadiens in 79, but I'm not sure if he was the coach when Dallas won their Cup in 99. I don't think Toe Blake was a captain with Montreal in his playing days. So we've gone a step further here. We are looking for people that captain a team to a Stanley Cup and then coached that same team to a Stanley Cup.
Was Toe Blake the captain?
Yes, he was.
So that's one.
He is one.
Was Joe Primo ever the captain of the Maple Leafs?
No.
Okay. Was Hap Day ever the captain of the Maple Leafs?
He sure was. That's two.
So he would be another. He would be another. Is there anybody else?
There's one other. Can you imagine? You're sitting there in silence. You're like, is anybody else? I said, no, that's it. Yeah, there's.
I could see you doing that to me, though, which would actually be funny. I would laugh if you did that.
No, there's one other. Rod Brindamore is the seventh to get to the Stanley Cup final as captain and head coach of the same team. But only three have won while holding both titles. So he would look to become the fourth. Yeah, there's one other.
Okay, so I'm not going to look at the coaches' names, but I'm going to look at the Stanley Cup winners just so I can think about this. So Toe Blake, Hap Day. This is old, right? Like this is nobody recent.
Correct.
I'm looking at the teams. Was Frank Boucher ever a captain?
He is not the guy we're thinking of.
What team?
Boston.
Eddie Shore?
No. I think this guy may be the first to do it.
Okay, I am not getting this. I can't remember who coached, because that's got to be 39 and 41, right? Because that's when the Bruins won their two early cups.
Yes. So I think, he was the first.
Because the Bruins won in 39 and 41, and the Rangers won in 40, and then they both went forever. You know, the Rangers obviously went 54 years, and the Bruins went 29. I don't know who the coach of the Bruins was back then. If it's not Eddie Shore, I'm not getting it.
Cooney Weiland.
I got to tell you something. I bet you even Cooney Weiland's descendants didn't even know that one.
I think he was the first to be able to say they've done both. And then Hap Day shortly thereafter. And then later, Toe Blake.
You could have given me no disrespect to Cooney Weiland. It's a great accomplishment, but you could have given me every name in the history of hockey, and that might have been the last one I picked.
I feel he came up with a trivia question a while ago, and I think he gave the same answer then.
Oh, was that the one about that was like last week or 2 weeks ago? Was Joe Primo and Hap Day were two of the answers?
It's just
Joe Primo and
different.
Dick Irvin
Yes. This was different, but I think it was this season. Anyway, that was deep into the archives, Elliotte. The fact that he got 2 out of 3 at this hour, that's a win.
Well, you got Toe Blake, I think. I only got Hap Day.
What are you talking? I have the answers. What do you mean I got Toe Blake?
Oh, I don't remember. I'm tired. You know who I think coach did it? Martin St. Louis. Sorry. not Martin.
Yeah.
I mean, Mason St. Louis, not Martin St. Louis. Mason St. Louis. That's who did it.
I was going to say, does Martin St. Louis have kids? Not sure. No, that was a good effort. I would buy you a Dairy Milk for that one. That is Dairy Milk worthy.
A boring old Dairy Milk.
It still tastes, it can still hit the spot at the right time. Awesome. All right, that was the Thoughtline presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. We'll take one final break and wrap up this edition of 32 Thoughts, the podcast, after this. That'll do it for this edition of 32 Thoughts, the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. And again, we apologize for being absent the last couple of days, but a few factors conspiring into having to wait until now. But we appreciate your listenership as always. We haven't had a chance to say yet, but for those that either don't remember or maybe this is your first season listening and along for the ride here with us, now that we have got to the Stanley Cup final, we will just do episodes going forward at the conclusion of each game, however long this final goes, and we hope it goes to the bitter end, because if game one was any indication, this should be a beauty. So that means the next time you will hear from us will be Friday morning after game two wraps up down here in Raleigh. Game two, mind you, pregame show for those listeners up in Canada can be seen on Sportsnet at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific time. Puck drop after 8 p.m. Eastern on CBC and Sportsnet from the Lenovo Center here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Game two on Thursday. We'll talk to you again on Friday after game two. Have a great rest of your week.